hunting,
fishing,
cooking,
camping,
conservation,
travel,
gardening,
photography, family.
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 This is the Outdoor Rules Podcast. Hi, everybody. Mike here. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Let's see. So far, I got Mark and Dad on here.
Hello.
Hello, world.
All right, guys. It's officially after the holidays now. It's getting towards the middle of January. We're kind of getting into the middle of winter when I think things tend to slow down just a little bit. I don't know. This time of year always puts me in mind of obviously all the outdoor things that we're still doing. Like, Mark, your ice fishing season started recently, right?
Yeah, we've been kind of a tentative season, slow going here. We had some cold weather in the beginning of December, and it's been up and down a little bit, but we did get out once. This weekend's been warm and rainy, so it's kind of hard on ice production. So we'll see. Hoping to get out next weekend, though.
Yeah, we're headed to Pennsylvania here in a couple of days to hang out again. It's I guess it's just about exactly a week of muzzleloader season left, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And there hasn't been a whole lot of flintlock hunting happening. Matt's been out a couple times. Dad, have you been out at all?
No. I thought I was going to go out and do some hunting, but I got lazy and haven't gotten out.
Yeah, I think it kind of happens this time of year. But yeah, we're going to come in and take advantage of a couple days of muzzleloader hunting, probably muzzleloader hunt for 2 days. And if there's ice somewhere, maybe we'll ice fish a little bit, Mark.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We hope there's some ice within a reasonable driving distance of home, Mom and Dad's place. So get out with you guys. That'll be fun for the kids, I think.
It would be fun. We're looking at kind of a non-existent ice fishing season here. I think there may be a lake or two small ones frozen up around New Mexico, but it's been such a warm December and early January that the main place that we fish, maybe now in the last day or two it's gotten complete ice cover, but the way it works here, they let the ice get pretty darn thick before they open it up and allow people on it, and I'm not sure that we're ever going to get out there to ice fish this year. It's just not looking too promising that way. And, I guess I feel like it kind of happens here this time of year where it just, things slow down a little bit in terms of the outdoor opportunity. But I don't know. There's always stuff to do, and it always kind of makes me think about what people used to do, especially, before we had all of the distractions that we have now, TV and football and obviously computers and phones and everything. So what I thought we would do today was call up Uncle Sim and chat with him. We'll just talk about winter stuff and how that was growing up on the farm and the kinds of things that they did. You guys good with that?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Let's see if we can succeed at making the technology work and get Simo on here.
Hello.
Hey, Simo.
Yeah, you guys ready to go, are you?
I think so. Are you there, Mark?
Yeah, we're here.
Are you there, Simo?
Yep, I'm there.
Amazing.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Who you got on here, Mark and your dad?
Yep, Mark and Poppy and me. So
You're in big trouble.
I guess we'll see.
I just listened to your fishing trip in Mexico. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, we really had a good time down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounded like it.
Yeah, I I guess it's a good example of something that I've probably stayed away from because of how popular it was with tourists. And, sometimes with those things, there's a reason why so many people go.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
All right. Well, tell me what you're expecting out of here.
I never know what to expect. I never know what to expect when I get more than 2 rules together. You know that, Sim. No, I don't know.
That may be true, man.
Yeah.
I'm probably a little more like Matt. You probably got to push me to get what you want out of me. And I'm probably not that good at that.
You've already said more words today than Matt has in the entirety of this podcast. So.
even in the one that was about him.
Yeah.
Even on that one. Well, give me a little round idea of exactly what you think you're looking at. Are you looking strictly for hunting stories, or are you looking for farm life? Or
Yeah, no, I mean both, but more. I think more farm life. I don't know. We can just get into it. This will be easy. It always is.
All right. Well,
yeah.
I may get long-winded, or you can interrupt and try to head me in a different direction if you need to.
All right, long-winded is not a problem.
We'll see.
All right, we'll start with a little background. If anybody that's listening hasn't listened to an episode with Uncle Sim in it before, we did a whole episode with Sim and Dick, and you guys are the last 2 siblings in 10 children, right?
Yes.
And 7 of those children were brothers. 6 of you survived into adulthood. The oldest brother died young, like as a child from tetanus. How old was Cyrus?
6.
6 when he died. So anyway, and Sim, what year were you born?
1932.
32. So
Dick was born in 36.
I'm not real good at math, but that makes you more than 90 years old.
I'll be 94 here in another week.
Yeah, his birthday's in 10 days.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, till
one day before you're dead.
Till this comes out, we'll be a week away. So happy birthday.
Okay.
94. Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I remember I was in my 50s. I didn't think I'd make it to 65. I don't know what happened.
Well, we're sure glad that you did.
Okay.
Well, one day after him, I'm going to be 75, and I'm not sure I'm sure I won't make it to him, his age.
That's the same thing I thought, so don't bet on it.
Yeah. Well, we hope you do, Poppy.
Yep, so do we.
Mm. Okay, so you were born in 32. How long did you live on the farm?
I lived until I was 21, I think.
So you grew up on a farm in Rexmont. Was that whole time at the farm in Rexmont?
Yes.
Okay, so real close, couple miles from Quentin, where Mark and I grew up.
Yeah.
So till 21, so you were there until 1953, year or two after Dad was born.
Yeah, I think it's 52 probably, so it might be a year off.
Yeah.
I think we had a sale. I think we had the sale selling off all our farm equipment in 52, I think.
In February of 52, I think, is when you sold the farm.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So
we didn't own the farm. We were just renting.
This was a farm that our family rented. How long did your parents rent that place, Sim?
They started renting it, I think, the year I was born or a year before I was born. So they had just started there. My brother Al and your granddad and the older ones were all born on the Crossroad Farms, which was in close to where Jeff lives, about near the Veterans Hospital.
That was probably, 5 miles away?
I don't think it was that far, probably 2 or 3, probably 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you moved to the little farm, which is
but we still
close to
kept that farm,
Crossroads.
and so we farmed both those farms actually. One was 94 acres, and the other one that my dad owned was, I think, 12 acres.
Right. The place
so we had to travel back and forth to farm it with horses.
Yeah, I remember Pop Grant telling a story about a team of horses getting away from him over at the Crossroads farm or that area and running all the way home.
Oh yeah, they'd always do that if they got away from you. they knew where they were headed for.
Back to the barn.
And if you had them away from the farm, they were always anxious to get back. So you had a hard time driving them away. You had an easy time driving them back.
Right. Well,
so they always found their way home.
The trail horses that I've worked with here in the West have all pretty much been the same. If they got away from you in the backcountry, they run back to the trailer. You know.
Yeah, they knew where to head for.
they know the shortest path to the hay is what it boils down to. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So in the 30s and 40s, did you guys have electricity on the farm?
Yeah, we had probably 2 circuits.
Mm-hmm.
We had electricity in some of the rooms. We didn't have it in all of them. We had electric in the kitchen, but just for the electric for the lights, and we didn't have any electric appliances or anything like that there. Everything was done we lived the whole life around one wood stove, wood in the summer and to cook on, and coal in the winter to heat. So you heated with one kitchen stove the whole house. The one thing that got heated was the kitchen and the bedroom above it, which had a stovepipe through it. You got a little bit of heat off the stovepipe. Other than that, you got no heat through the rest of the house.
I've lived a handful of places now, and I got to tell you, I think of all the places that I've lived, I think that the weather in southeast Pennsylvania, south central Pennsylvania in the winter is the worst weather of anywhere I've ever been. And
I don't know. I think the weather now is much milder than it was when we were kids. That's maybe my imagination, but
yeah,
I can easily remember walking across picket fences that we had in our yard that were 5.5 so feet high, and walking across them in the winter in the snow.
Like the snow has drifted up
I don't
over the
remember
fence.
anything like that in the last 20, 30 years. Yeah, the drifting snow that high that you got a lot of drifted snow.
Right.
But
you know, I say that because now, and it probably was colder then, but even till we were growing up, Mark, we got some storms. I mean, we got some snow, a couple winters in the mid 90s where there was lots and lots of snow. But the winter there, I feel like, is at like a lot of that 35 to 40 degrees, and it's kind of a damp, cold. There's a lot of gray, overcast days. You know, it almost like I prefer the winter in north central Pennsylvania just because it is a little colder and you're more likely to get snow.
Yeah, that's true. I lived in the northern part of Pennsylvania for quite a while. And the winters were nice. It snowed almost every night, just a light drift of snow, and everything stayed clean and everything stayed cold, and you didn't get the thawing and freezing rains. You just got snow.
Right.
I like that weather much better than southeastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I mean. And so, you know, part of why I wanted to talk to you and about this, you know, I wondered, I mean, what winter was like then, and not so much the weather, but you know, I mean, it was back before televisions even, certainly, obviously, way back before computers and smartphones and all the things we have to occupy ourselves now. So I'm curious what winter was like on the farm then, both like what were the things from a work standpoint that you did in the winter, but then also what did you do outside? What were the leisure activities? What you looked forward to, what you hated about it. So I don't know. I mean, I guess we could just jump in on the farm work side of things.
Let me start it. I'll try to go through the year month by month. Maybe that might help. If you start around Christmas time, we generally got together for Christmas. We didn't have big parties or anything like that there. We generally started Christmas Day by going to our aunts who lived in town, which was Aunt Nora and Gaius Spots. And we went to their house for Christmas dinner. And we always got a big orange, which we never got at home. We always enjoyed an orange and a half a pound box of candy that we only liked the ones that were light chocolate instead of the dark chocolate. Usually the candies were always half dark chocolate, and we'd squeeze each one to try to see what was in them. And we'd go there for Christmas, and that would be our Christmas. At home, we'd have very few Christmas presents. Each kid would get maybe one or two small Christmas presents, but there was no big major Christmas thing other than we went to church and had a Christmas ceremony. I think on Christmas Eve, where us kids all had to participate in some kind of pageant that they put on, and none of us could ever remember our line. And all of us were shy and too shy to participate in it. And that pretty much covered most of what the Christmas life was like.
Mm-hmm.
And after Christmas, we never, on the New Year's Day was always butcher day. We'd always butcher a beef on New Year's morning. We'd have to go in and tie up the bull with a rope around his neck, and we had an anchor built into the corn shed, and we had a long hay rope, but we anchored it out there first, and then we kind of chased him into the corn shed and pulled his head down to where we could shoot him and then butcher him and skin him out. And that was the first day of our butcher season on New Year's Day. So we'd get the bull skinned and split in half and hung in the corn shed, and let them hang overnight. And then the next day we'd start cutting them up. One of the things us kids always looked forward to was the bull penis. We'd always get the penis out of the bull, hang it up and hang a couple plowshares on it and leave it hang there until it got stiff and solid. And then we'd use it for a whip for chasing cows or animals around the farm.
Huh.
So we always had a couple of old bull penises around as clubs so that you can choose to either edit this out or you can leave it in.
Oh, I'm leaving this in. Now, I do have a question. You never, none of the brothers would have ever hit one of the other brothers with the bull penis, right?
Oh yeah, we got hit plenty of times with it, and it stung when it hit you.
I can't imagine Mark and Matt and I would have ever done anything like that if we had the chance.
But that was always the amusement you had when we butchered the bull. Right?
Well, that's not the only thing that happened with them. Do you remember what you gave me when I retired?
No.
A putter?
A what? Oh, a putter.
A putter. Yeah,
yeah,
what was that made out of?
Yeah, I think that was made out of a bull penis. I forgot about that. I don't remember us ever making those. We were never sophisticated. We didn't even know there was such a thing as golf. But anyway, the next couple of days we'd butcher pigs. And so we'd start the same thing in the morning. My mother and father would get a couple of big, enormous pots of boiling water together. And you had a scalding trough. I don't know if anybody remembers what they looked like, but it was a long trough with handles on four corners. And you'd kill the pig and bleed it, and then you'd throw it in that trough and carry it to where the hot water was and pour all this boiling water on it. And you had chains in there so you could roll them around in the trough, and then you skinned it. 4 or 5 people would get around it with these skinning discs. I don't know what they call them, but they skinned the hair while the water was boiling in these trough and get the pigs completely skinned before you'd hang them up and butcher them.
Simo, were those like scrapers? Because you weren't taking the skin off, right? You're scraping the hair.
No, we weren't taking the skin off, just scraping the hair off.
Yeah.
So the trough would be full of pig hair and hot boiling water, and you'd not skin them, but scald them and get all the hair off of them before you'd hang them up on, trying to think what we called the spreaders, but you'd spread them out and cut them up and then butcher the pigs. And then they'd pull out the intestines, and the women would wash out, turn the intestines inside out, wash them out, and use them for stuffing sausages afterward. And I remember one other story. We always kept the bladders out of the pigs and made soccer balls out of them. So that was, we never could afford a soccer ball, so we always could only play soccer until the bladders busted.
until you ran out of pig bladder.
Maybe in February or March, your bladders would dry out enough where they'd break. So it's the only time we play soccer.
I love the stories so much because it's kind of exactly to that point that you had to make your own things to do, right?
Yeah, had your own fun. Yeah.
And
in winter time, then we'd have neighbor farm kids or kids from town would come down and we'd play what was called bloom sock. And you'd take a burlap bag and tie it in as tight a knot as you could take it. And then you'd run all over the lofts of the barn and chase each other and throw that lump of a burlap bag at whoever you were chasing. And if you hit them, then they were it. And it was like a game of tag. And you kept chasing each other all through the barn, up and down the lofts and the overheads. And
what?
And Sunday afternoon, you could play bloom sock.
Bloom sock?
Bloom sock, yeah.
Huh. Kind of like ball tag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a bag was tied in a knot, and it had like ends hanging out of it, like 6, 8, 10 inches out of each end that you could grab a hold of, and then you could kind of sling it when you were throwing it. It's just throwing it, you could whip it pretty well by hanging on the ends of the bag. And you could whack them pretty good with it if you got close enough to within 10, 20 feet. And we'd play that around the barn, the upper part of the barn, like a Sunday afternoon, all afternoon, just chase each other crazy all through that barn. And maybe 8, 10 kids in there chasing each other and playing that game.
Before you leave the butchering, from listening to the stories up at deer camp, it sounded like that was an activity where you had a lot of people from Rexmont come down when that was happening.
Yes, we didn't.
Like a big social event.
It was. Well, we did a lot of butchering at that time. All the mine people had their own pig pens and had their own pigs and their own grape arbors where they made wine, and so almost every family had. Not most of them, I'd say over 50% of them had their own pigs. So we would butcher for different weekends after that through the winter for different families up in Rexmont or Goosetown or towns around there. And we'd take our manure sleds and a horse and go shoot the pigs at their place, and then we'd haul them to our place and butcher them for them. And then we'd hang them up in the barn. And they'd come down, and they usually brought homemade wine along, and then they'd get in big arguments as to what the weights of them were, and they'd get into. It was really enjoyable. Most of them were speaking Italian or something, so you didn't know what they were saying. But they'd get into big arguments as to who could outguess the weight of the pigs. And my dad had these old scales that you hung weights on them, and he'd be the official weight master and settle the arguments and the bets before they hauled our butchered pigs back home. So we butchered a lot, and when we butchered the bull, we usually let them know, and they'd come down with molasses cans, they called them. They were maybe a gallon, half gallon, a gallon can, and they would capture the blood coming out of the bull. I don't remember if they did it on the pigs. I think they might have done it on the pigs too. And they take it back home and make blood sausage out of it, which I could never imagine somebody making sausage out of it. I think somewhere in Europe one time I tasted blood sausage, and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine when I was a kid anybody ever making sausage out of animal blood, but they did it.
Yeah.
I don't know what all they added to it, but it was good to eat.
I think there's a bunch of places in Europe that make blood sausage and black pudding, which is kind of something that they make with blood that probably like similar to what they stuff in cases for blood sausage.
Yeah. So we did quite a bit of butchering. I had forgot about that, but we did quite a bit of butchering on weekends. Like on a Saturday, we'd agree to butcher in the winter when things were a little slow on the fields and farm. And
I wanted to ask in that vein, Sim. So, obviously you're butchering in the winter because it's cold and the meat, you have time to deal with the meat, right?
Yeah.
But
plus you always had a big smokehouse in it. You'd have to keep the smoke going and smoke the like we'd smoke the hams and we'd smoke the beef, dried beef and bologna and sausages and all. Smoke them and then hang them in the basement so nothing mice couldn't get at them.
Well, that's what I wanted to
so you always
ask.
had your meat hanging in the basement.
How I mean, this is, you're essentially putting up meat for a whole year, more or less. And what were all those ways to preserve meat? And then how, did you have like fresh meat, like steaks and burgers throughout the year somehow? Or was that mostly a winter thing, and then the sausage and bologna and the other things that you made and smoked and preserved were what you had the rest of the year?
Yeah, we didn't usually have, normally, other than when we butchered, we normally didn't have much in the way of fresh meat. We had a lot of canned meat. We canned a lot of beef and a lot of pork in glass jars.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, it's still the best piece of meat that I've ever eaten was a canned tenderloin that we would make. And there's still nothing that beats it. I don't care if it's a steak or prime rib, that'll beat. And it looks awful when you take it out of the jar. It looks like something nobody would ever eat.
Right.
And when they cooked it up, it was the best meat ever. And it still is. If you can find somebody that'll make your canned tenderloin, you won't find a better piece of meat.
Hey, Mark.
Anyway, we ate a lot of canned meats, a lot of canned vegetables, a lot of canned fruits in the wintertime.
Yeah, Mike.
This sounds like a project for Erica.
You buy the beef.
I'll buy a beef tenderloin so that we can test out Sim's canned tenderloin. I want to try it.
Yeah, I do too.
So was that fully cooked when they canned it, or did partially cooked and then you cooked it later?
I'm not sure. I remember exactly how I think they partially cooked it, but I'm not positive. I know they cooked it again when they took it out of the jars. But
we cook a lot. We can a lot of our deer meat, Simon, here.
Yeah.
So
how do you do that?
Typically, you don't cook it. Typically, when you can it, it cooks in the can.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you pull it out to use it, then you're going to reheat it. So you're going to put it in whatever you're going to, if we're making tacos or burger or spaghetti sauce, it's going to get warmed up in the pan, but it's already cooked.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they cooked it in the jar. And I remember they'd have these big galvanized containers that they'd have on top of the stove, and they'd get the water boiling in that container, and then they'd set the jars.
Yeah, a pressure cooker, a pressure canner. Yeah.
I don't remember a pressure cooker. I don't think it was pressure.
Was it shredded meat, Simon, or was it solid?
It was in pieces. Like if the tenderloin would be in pieces, that when you got it out of the jar, you'd pull it out, and it would look awful. It would look like something you wanted to throw away. But it would be in pieces of tenderloin cut into, I don't know if it was slices. It was uneven pieces. They weren't anything nice to look at. I'm pretty sure it was canned in like 6 jars at a time in a metal container that sat on the stove, and it'd get the water boiling in there when you put them in, and it'd leave them in that container for so much time. I don't know how long. And I remember they had to test each one when they got them out to be sure that they sealed properly. Mm-hmm. And you put them in the basement and you left them there until you were ready to eat again. Most of the meat was either in cans or hanging in the basement off the joists with hooks. Like you'd have dried beef, a lot of dried beef. I don't know if you guys ever ate dried beef, but if you slice it really thin, it was as good as any meat you ever had. Dried beef, and we make sausages and smoked and bologna and anything else like it there that could be hung up and smoked. We smoked everything. Never had freezers.
Right. You guys didn't have freezers. I mean, that's kind of why I was asking, because there wasn't really modern refrigeration when you were on the farm, right?
We had a refrigerator, but that was it. No freezer. And so there was not a lot of electric appliances. We never used electric frying pans or electric anything other than refrigerator. The stoves were always wood or coal. And you dried a lot of things like corn and vegetables. And dried them on this big galvanized pans that would set on the back end of the stove. It would maybe be 2.5 foot square or so, and you put water in the tank inside it, and then dried a lot of vegetables and fruits on top of it, just by leaving them on the stove all day while you were cooking on the other half of the stove. It would get hot enough that the steam would come out the hole where you poured the water into, and then the top would get real hot.
Huh.
Almost like boiling water in there. So,
it was
so
like
a
a double cooker, like there was water underneath and then the pan on top. Is that what you mean?
The whole thing was built with an inside compartment that was maybe 2 to 3 inches in big flat, maybe 2.5 square feet.
Right.
And it had a funnel like built into the end of it that you could water in, keep water in, and the steam would come out of it.
Yep.
And that would dry whatever you put on the top of it.
Right.
So you could dry corn, you could dry beans, you could dry fruits. It was almost in the wintertime, you almost had a lot of stuff drying on the top of the stove most of the time.
Huh.
And then the other side of the stove would have a big water a water tank on the side that was built into the side right next to the firebox. And that's where you got all your hot water. We never had a electric hot water heater or any kind of water heater. You dip water out of that tank to put it to wash up with. And that was the only water you had. Then you had to keep putting cold water back in there to keep heating it up so somebody else could have it after you were through with it.
Right.
So that was the only source of water. And you had to carry that in from the pump, which was 30, 40 feet from the house. So you had to carry it in buckets, pump it out by hand out of the pump, and carry it in. In the same way, you had to carry a lot of water into the cooler for milk. When we were milking 10 cows, we'd get 200 to 300 pound cans of milk. And to cool them, to make sure that they were cool, when Hershey picked them up at their milk corner at the end of our lane, we would set these cans out there and the truck would come by and pick up the milk every day. So we had to pump all the hand water to cool that milk that went there. So we got a lot of exercise pumping water. So I got off the subject here a little bit. If you're still talking about butchering, want to go ahead?
No. This is kind of amazing. I mean, I never really thought about the fruits and vegetables and how you would have dried them. I mean, I think I can envision what you're describing, but I've never heard about this or seen one before. It makes sense. It's basically like you're saying, a container where the water, I mean, that keeps the heat even, right? The water gets hot, never gets hotter than boiling water does at 212.
Yeah.
And as long as you keep water in there, then you don't burn anything, but it keeps an even heat and you can dry stuff out on top of it, right?
Yeah, we dried a lot of things on the top of the stove.
Ah, that's cool.
But again, that was the only heat in the house. One, and behind the stove was always a wood chest. And the wood chest was the main discipline for all of us kids. If you were badass or got in trouble or mouthed off or even attempted to mouth off, the only thing your dad did was give you the evil eye, and you knew automatically to get your butt up and get over and sit on the wood chest. And you stayed there until you got permission to get off. And there's usually never much in the way of wording that went on.
Yeah.
If he just gave you the evil eye, you had about 30 seconds to get your butt on that wood chest. If you didn't, you got your butt kicked. So you knew when you got the evil eye, you better get moving.
Yeah.
Most of us did our time. Your dad did his time, and Al, Dick, and I all did our time on the wood chest behind the stove.
Oh, my.
So that was a typical kitchen scene almost every night. The typical radio, the entertainment was no TV. You had one radio, and you had a typical list of things you were listening to in the evening. It usually never changed. Yeah. Walter Winchell was on at 6:45 in the evening. So everybody sat around and listened to the Walter Winchell with the news, like for 15 or 20, I don't know, 15 minutes or half an hour. I don't remember how long it was anymore. And then after that, you had a series of 2 or 3 radio programs. One was Jack Benny. And I'm trying to think what 2 or 3 of the other ones were, but sometimes we'd listen to, and everybody listened attentively to the radio when you had these stations, when you had these programs on.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have a little box radio that everybody listened to. And we had one telephone line where you had to crank the handles to ring it. And when you rang it, you were on a party line with maybe 8, 10 other people in Rexmont. And you knew what your own rings were. Like when they would ring 1 long and 4 shorts, that was our ring.
Mm-hmm.
If it was one ring and 1 long ring and 2 or 3 shorts, you always knew who else was on there.
Right.
So if somebody was on the line, you had to listen in and see if somebody was on first. And if nobody was on the line, then you could get on. And can you imagine 10 families on the same telephone line and everybody trying to interrupt each other? Telephone conversations on phones were amazing at that time.
Yeah.
Everybody was mad at everybody else because nobody would get off the phone. And it was always telephone conversations. And then you always never knew how many people were listening when you were talking to somebody on the phone.
Right, because anybody could pick up and listen.
Yeah, anybody could pick up and listen. So
It would have made for an interesting podcast.
Every now and then you'd catch somebody sneezing or something, and you know who it was that was listening. So it was always
back in the woodstove sim.
Yeah.
I remember from you guys talking. Where did you take baths on a Saturday night?
In the summertime, you took a tub and went out behind the house. You got some water out of this. We usually had what we called the back part of the house. Was in the summertime we lived in, had another wood stove out in it, and that way it didn't heat the inside of the house when it was really hot in the summer. And so you could get your hot water off the stove, go out back and get your weekly Saturday night bath. Or you could, in the wintertime, you'd get your tub of water and get behind the stove. Or you get your bath there in the tub of water. So that was usually our baths. It was always a lot of fun.
Was that
was in the kitchen behind the stove?
Yeah, you had to get behind the stove and get your bath there. And it usually didn't take you long either. It generally was a once-a-week activity. Usually on Saturday night because you had to be cleaned up for church on Sunday morning.
No, that makes sense.
That was the rules.
I was just curious then, so you're kind of talking about January and February butchering. What else? I mean, obviously there were normal farm chores like milking cows that went on all year, right?
Yeah.
Well, you kind of started with the months, and I really like that organization. So how did it kind of go the rest of the winter and into spring?
Well, the rest of January, you ended up with your cattle in the barns, and so you had always generating a lot of manure. So you had wheelbarrows that would go through each stable and clean up the manure and haul it behind the corn shed on the manure pile. And you kept on accumulating manure all winter until generally March and April, probably March mostly. By that time, you'd have an enormous manure pile, and then you'd have a manure spreader with beaters on the back of the spreader and a chain that would drag it back into the beaters. So you'd load these manure spreaders with manure and then have a 2 or 3 horse team and take them out in the field and spread them. And you have to spread the manure, and you tried to get it while the ground was still froze, if you could in March, so that you didn't leave a lot of mud or get mud tracked everywhere. So you tried to get the manure spread before the frost went out.
Mm.
And that was usually a project. We always competed how much manure we could get spread in one day. Usually 13 to 15 loads was probably max that you could get out. And that was a lot of work. We had to work hard to get them all.
What were you using to load the manure spreader?
Just manure forks.
Yeah, by hand.
Yeah, by hand. Yeah, all by hand. Loaded on the spreader, and then usually you had to try to get the manure pile. The manure pile would generate heat from spontaneous combustion, I guess. So the inside, the manure piles wouldn't be frozen. So the outside that was frozen, you'd have to fork off and get the inside out of the manure out of it first, and then try to get the others when it thawed out. So March was generally a lot of work with manure. But in the meantime, in the winter, we spent a lot of time. The kids had a lot of fun. We had the pond where we would dam up every year, and the pond was originally made for an ice house. We had an ice house on the farm, but we didn't make ice. But before we lived there, they would cut ice out of that pond and put it in the basement of the chicken house and pack it in sawdust, and it would keep ice until July and August in the summer. So that's where you got most of your cooling effect from anything that you were using ice. So the other thing we did was we had hockey posts sunk into the ice or into the mud, and we'd play ice hockey all winter long from December through January, February, and into March, sometimes into a little bit of April on this pond. And we had a hockey course laid out, or whatever you call it, and each of the little mining towns had its own hockey team. Mm-hmm. And it'd be all kinds of people, from little kids to adults, and even some women played. And each town had their own hockey team, and then they'd play hockey. If it was moonlight at night, we could play hockey at night. Otherwise, the neighbors would all play on Saturdays, but we had to work. We couldn't play Saturdays until it was Saturday night. And then we could play Sunday afternoons. But then you have all these individual teams that would compete, and they have some really nasty hockey games going on. And most of the winter, to stay frozen. I can remember in the spring that we would skate on it, and there was only about 2 or 3 feet of water underneath it. And the ice would get that thawed out that you could skate across, and you could skate and it would sink down where you were skating over and then come back up again after you got off. So finally it would break through, and then that would end it all. And then you'd get a spring storm, and it would wash out the dam breast, and it would all go down the other pasture, and that would be the end of the hockey season. But we played a lot of hockey and a lot of sled riding in the winter when we were kids.
I want to talk about sled riding, Simo, but I just wanted to ask, you're saying that you guys had that pond was on your farm?
Yes.
And would other people come to the farm to play hockey as well?
Yeah, it'd be each little town would have their own team. Like the Brick Row had a team, Goosetown had a team. Each one of the little mining towns had Miners Village had a team, and they'd schedule games on that. Sometimes 2 and 3 on a Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon. They had games scheduled just like a regular skating rink. It's amazing how many people come in there and skated on that pond. And then we'd have it rigged up with a pipe up the creek that fed the pond. So when we wanted the ice would get all butchered up from playing hockey on it all the time. And when we would get a good cold night, we'd put the pipe in and try to flood the whole thing with new ice.
Yeah.
And try to get it to freeze over, so it would be all fairly good on the lower half. The upper half would be pretty rough and ripply. But that didn't affect the games. They still went on either way. I had pretty rough ice on the one end of the pond. But a lot of entertainment on that ice hockey pond.
Mark, have you ever heard this story before?
No, I had no idea.
I have never heard that before.
And all your uncles and our brothers and everyone were all pretty good hockey players, actually. In fact, I still have a puck that in the spring they would lose a lot of pucks. On the sides, they'd hit a puck and it'd go out over the dam breast or bend or the walls of the sides of the pond, and they'd be in the mud. In the spring, we'd mess around there and we'd find all kinds of hockey pucks. I still have a hockey puck somewhere with a guy in Goosetown's initial in it on one side, and the other side were my initials after I found it and put mine in. So I still had one of those hockey pucks. I don't see somewhere I just moved recently, so I may not have it anymore, but I had it up until a year or so ago.
You know,
I never gave them back to whoever lost their hockey pucks lost them. They were in my name after I got my initials on them.
Finders keepers.
Yeah, finders keepers.
Simo, I don't know if you had a chance to listen. We talked about all of our toboggan wrecks, sledding wrecks a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
You guys must have done a bunch of that kind of stuff too, right?
We did. We never did toboggans. We did a lot of sled riding. If from Rexmont on the Rexmont Road, right by the brick road, there was a lane came down to our farm. It's where the Bookers, or not the Bookers, Kurtzes lived, and Angelos, and a bunch of people lived up in there. But we could ride that in the wintertime, and we could sled that. And it was a pretty good long ways, a long run. You could run from that road up on there down up into the driveway of our farm. And if the weather was really good, you could run through our farm and out the other end and down the lane the other way, but not very often. But once in a while, you could do that.
Yeah.
So we'd be sled riding a lot in the wintertime. Sometimes you'd have 15, 20 kids and adults. Other people would sled ride there too. And it was a long run, and it usually got icy, and you weren't running on snow. You were running mostly on ice.
Yeah. Fast.
So it actually ran a lot faster. Yeah.
Right.
So we had a lot of really good sled riding in the wintertime there.
For anybody that's not familiar with this area that we're talking about, a bunch of the towns you've been mentioning, Sim, are mining towns. There's a big iron mine there, and we've talked about it before, but like Rexmont is kind of like halfway up on the side of the mountain, and the mine's kind of up above and behind Rexmont, and then where your farm is more or less at the base of the mountain where it starts to flatten out into the valley. Is that like a fair
that's
description?
a good explanation of it. Yeah.
And so you're saying you could go up into Rexmont where the road came out of Rexmont and then sled all the way back down through the farm.
Yeah, that was true.
Which was also...
So each of these little mining towns were scattered around the town, around the mine. And so they had like 300 homes. The company had built 300 homes for miners that they could live in for rent. The rents would be like $5 to $8 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so each one of these little towns had coal mining, or not coal mining, mining families living in them. So each one of them had a lot of young kids and babies and people. And a lot of people came out and skated, and a lot of them came out and sled rided at night. So each individual town would have its own hockey team, its own baseball team. We used to play basketball in the barn floors. Not as much basketball, but we played some. And in the corn shed, we usually had baskets set up in the corn shed that we could pull the implements out and play basketball in there. So that was some of the winter in it. And that's everything I can think of for. That's not everything, but that's pretty much covers winter.
It's funny because it seems like, it seems like now, like I started this out, it's hard to imagine what people did and how you stayed busy. And then listening to you talk about all this stuff, it just sounds like you were busy all the time. Like there was just, like you made stuff to do. There was just things happening, whether that was family and, just local to the farm or community stuff. But it also sounds like the farm, between butchering and hockey and all the other stuff that you did there, like you guys had a lot of community right there coming to the farm, right?
That's true. We had a lot of people coming in. Like in the wintertime, we butchered for a lot of different families every weekend. So that's pretty much
some of the other
Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, Sim, some of the other things I remember you talking about, specifically, I remember my father grumbling about apples. He said, we always had apples in the basement, and Grandma or his mom would send him down to pick out the apples that were starting to get rotten. And he grumbled, we never got to eat good apples. We always ate rotten apples. But I do think, weren't they also things that you had that the other people in Rexmont would come down and get from you?
Well, we had potatoes. We raised always usually 2 to 3 acres of potatoes every year. And we had to not hand dig them, but we dug them with a potato digger with horses. And that would dig them out and scatter them on the ground. And then we'd have to go out with a horse and wagons and pick up the potatoes, carry them into the barn. And we'd have an enormous barn. I don't know how many tons of potatoes in the barn that we would cover with old rugs and canvases and whatever we could do to keep them from freezing. And then people in the mining towns would send their kids down with bags to get potatoes, and my dad would sit there and grade potatoes almost every evening. In the evening before he'd come into the house, he'd sit and grade potatoes and have them graded into separate containers or bags from different sizes, like a peck or 2 pecks or a bushel or half a bushel. And kids would come down with change and buy potatoes, and we'd sell potatoes until probably March, and in small quantities. And I always hated. I never planted a potato after I left the farm ever again. We processed a lot of potatoes. So they'd come down for milk. They'd buy raw milk. They'd buy eggs, chickens. We'd clean chickens and sell chickens. You could order, people could come down and order chickens, and we'd have chickens cleaned for them on the weekend or whenever they said they were going to come down and get them. We'd sell apples. So we had probably about 5 acres of apples. And that's another thing I would have never planted another apple tree. Because we had this old Buick that was a 1933, I think it was a 1933 Buick funeral car that my dad bought for $100. And it was right before the Second World War. And gas was rationed, and you couldn't buy tires, and you had a hard time just trying to keep them running. And instead of having a pickup truck on the farm, we had this big, extremely long funeral home. If you took the seats out inside, you'd probably have the equivalent of an 8-foot pickup truck bed. So you could load that, we'd take the seats out and load that all with bags of apples. And they had a rack on the back, and the racks on both sides of the spare tires that were built into the fenders. And it had a big running board, so we could load apples on both running boards behind the spare tires and across the back, and fill the whole inside. I'd swear we have a ton and a half of apples inside that car. And we'd have to take it to make cider. And we'd have to take it to the neighbors, a couple of neighbors over, where they had a cider press, and we'd get cider made. And then we'd bring it back, and the next day we'd make apple butter. And the same time we were making the cider, my mother would have all these apples that we had to pick out of the orchards as they fell off the trees. And she'd have 3 or 4 women come down and help her peel apples, and they'd spend a couple evenings peeling apples and putting them into this. And we put the apples and the cider all in this big copper pot. And she'd start at 5:30 in the morning, getting the fire going and getting a pot of apple butter going, and it would cook all day till 5 or so in the evening. And then you'd have to get 3 or 4 people and lift that big pot off the hooks in the fireplace and set it out and dip out all the apple butter and put them in the crocks, which were earthen crocks, and let them cool. And that's what she'd sell apple butter at the market each Saturday when she had a market. So apples were always a big pain in the butt to process. Your dad was right. We usually got the ones that were either rotten or partially rotten, and we could cut those out, and we'd get to eat the rest of them. And the good ones you either sold or went into apple butter.
You didn't waste good apples on the kids.
That's right. We usually got seconds. It was amazing how much we could load into that big old Buick car. And I remember he had that thing for probably 8 to 10 years. And then on Saturday night, we'd have to clean the car up, put the seats back in, and that's all what we went to church in on Sunday morning. Pull in churchyard to this big funeral car with a whole 6, 8, 10 kids in it. We were probably a sight to see when we came in there in the morning. But I always wish I could have found a picture. I never found a picture of that car, and he had it for a long time and ended up selling it again for $100.
Oh yeah.
From the whole time we had it, and I remember he had to drive it. If we came from Clinton back down to Cornwall, we'd shut the engine off when we got to the halfway house there and coast all the way to the stop sign at Cornwall at the school. So we didn't burn fuel because you had the gasoline was rationed. And you had to have ration coupons to buy gas.
Right.
So, and to try to keep that big old Buick in gas was a project in itself.
Oh man.
But that was Apple stories. But we loaded the same way with grain. We'd load that car up with big bags of burlap bags of corn and oats and haul them to the mill and make feed for the cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And for pig feed and cattle for steers, for meat or not meat for feed for the steers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that Buick got a lot of mileage on it. But that was additional things that we did. So apples and potatoes were not my favorite fruits to raise. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, I'm glad we got on this because I was curious, and I certainly don't mean to be sexist or anything, but back then there was a pretty clear division of labor in a lot of ways between men and women. So what were the things? I mean, the women were helping butcher and canning meat and doing that stuff. What were there other kind of wintertime activities? I mean, you mentioned it before, but talk a little bit about I know your mom took things to market on Saturday. Was that a year-round thing, and what was that like in the winter?
That was in the winter. You sold anything that you could sell. We sold meats. We sold eggs. We sold chickens. We would clean chickens. We usually always got 300 chickens in the spring, and roosters we would butcher as the fall came on, and they were big enough. We'd butcher them and we'd take them as clean chickens at the market. So your mother and the kids would always end up having to clean the chickens and feather them, and they'd really be nice looking chickens when she'd take them to market and have them covered in cloth, and they'd be live, or not live, but fresh chickens. So she'd sell chickens and eggs, and then she'd bake. She'd start baking on Wednesday morning after she got the milking and other house things done. She'd bake all day Wednesday. Cookies, sugar cookies mostly, chocolate ones and regular white cookies, and she'd make big trays and probably have 30, 40 dozens of cookies.
Oh man!
That she'd have on big trays that she'd take in, and then the other days she'd start making round cakes, and in a wood stove she'd bake all these where you didn't have temperature controls. You had to control the temperature by how much fire you had going in the stove, and she'd bake all these big cakes and have these cake boxes that the grocery stores used to get crackers and stuff in, that you could put a big round cake in each one, and she'd make all these different flavored cakes. Sometimes she'd have 20 and 30 big cakes, round cakes, that she'd take to market. She did a lot of that in the wintertime, and so usually that old Buick was loaded solid with stuff to the market. And when you got to market and got in to set everything up for the stand, the market would open at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they rang a bell when you could start selling something. And by the time she'd get set up by 1 o'clock and be set up in there, there'd be 20, 30 people around her booth trying to get the stuff. Like she'd sell cakes or half a cake or a quarter of a cake at a time, or she'd sell so many cookies, or she'd take orders for chickens and clean chickens and anything else that came off the farm that you could use for the market. Usually, depending on the season, in the summer it was a lot of vegetables and any products we could make that they could sell on market.
And Sim, where
market was a major project on the farm to keep that going.
I'm sorry, you said
the market was located on 9th Street, 9th and Lehman, I believe it was called, on the See, the east
Yeah,
side
that's
of the
correct.
street.
Yeah.
Great big market house that was in there.
In the city of
And
Lebanon.
one of the stories I remember when I was a kid, I never got hot dogs. We never ate hot dogs at the house. Hot dogs to us would have been a total luxury. You never could have believed it. We never ate any hot dogs. We always had whatever meat we had around on the farm. We never starved. We always had plenty of meat and plenty of things to eat during the Depression and really tough times. That's one of the things living on a farm. You usually ate fairly well. But I remember my mother would have a money box sitting on the back of her booth where she had in the market. And I remember stealing a nickel out of that money box and went over to the other side of the market where the guy was selling fresh meats and sold hot dogs. And I bought a hot dog off of him and ate it right in front of the stand. Just chewed it up and ate it. And the guy came back to my mother and said, and told my mother that I stood there and ate that hot dog. So my mother looked at me and said, "Where'd you get the money to buy the hot dog?" And I was hammered. I learned fast. I don't think I ever stole a nickel off my mother ever again after that.
Didn't take long to get caught on that, huh?
Didn't take long to get caught. That's right. So I got caught on that one.
Oh man.
But yeah, there are a lot of market stories that we could come up with. But my mother worked hard to put everything together to go to market, and I think that's probably what bought most any clothes that we ever bought. And then after market, she'd go across the street. We never had big grocery stores at that time. You had little grocery stores that were like in people's houses.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little grocery store right across from the market that we went to, and we bought all the flour and all the sugars and everything that you needed for baking for the next week. And usually, most times on Saturday night when they came back from market, we ended up with oyster soup. We always get the container of fresh oysters that came from Maryland, or I don't know where they came from, and you have oyster soup on Saturday night after market.
Wow.
In the wintertime.
That was just a wintertime thing?
Yeah, I think that was mostly wintertime. I don't think we got oysters much in the summer.
I mean, I suppose in the summer it'd be hard to move oysters any distance before they went bad. So I guess that would make sense, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be moist, and it was an easy meal to cook. You just hot milk and oysters was pretty much it. And I always drank the milk and never eat the oysters because I couldn't imagine swallowing an oyster. So I ended up getting the milk tasted like oysters. I wouldn't eat the oysters.
Wow, this has been great, Simo. This is really good.
Yeah.
I did, Outdoor Rules podcast. I totally forgot, Sim. I wanted to ask about the hunting here in New Mexico. We hunt quail through February 15th, so we have a little bit of winter hunting. But like in Montana, where I did a lot of pheasant hunting, that ended January 1st. Were you guys still small game hunting into the new year, or was there a time at which that ended?
We were not allowed to hunt until we got the corn husked, and we usually had 15 to 20 acres of corn that we had to husk by hand. And you'd go out in the cornfield with a box wagon and 2 horses, and you'd start down the rows. And if you had 2 guys husking corn, you husked 2 rows. If you had 3 husking corn, you husked 3 rows, and threw them. You had a sideboard on the side of the wagon, so you didn't throw them across the wagon. And you'd throw each ear into the wagon, and the horses would be walking or following the rows right next to the ones that we already husked that were already husked. And so they'd be right next to us, and we'd be husking corn. And we had to get the corn husked before our dad would let us hunt small game. So that was always a big fight in the fall and in October, late in October and early November. And we'd try to get the corn all husked before Thanksgiving so we could get some hunting in, small game hunting in. Mm-hmm. And we'd always have to get 2 or 3 loads of corn husks and into the corn shed. And that was usually always a big hustle. And then you had that night after supper, you'd have to go out and shovel the corn off into the corn sheds. And the corn shed had 2 sides to it. One was crib on either side, and then you could store implements inside it. And you'd have to shovel the corn ears into the, and that's how they divided the corn. As to half of it went to us, and half of it went to the owner of the farm. So we'd have 2 sheds, so the owner could come down and look and see that we shared it equally.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we'd get the corn husk as early as we could, and then we could hunt after that. So we tried to get done before Thanksgiving, and then Thanksgiving would be a big day for small game hunting, and we would hunt hard on Thanksgiving. And we usually did really well with pheasants and a lot of rabbits, and we'd hunt the neighbors' farms and our farms, and usually did really well, and had a lot of enjoyment. The season would usually end in the end of November, so. No, I don't think we could hunt anymore in January after.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. How long into the winter did it go? So
I think it was just most of November was most of the hunting season you had. So we had a lot of good small game hunting at that time, much better than what it is today.
Yeah, it's one of the things I lament. I would have loved to have seen those days, but so it goes, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Simo, happy birthday. Thanks so much for doing this.
Well, I appreciate
Happy birthday, Sim.
doing it. I hope it works out that we got enough that you can call enough out of there that you can make something out of.
No, this is a great one. I got lots of good stuff here to work with. So thanks again.
All right, you're welcome.
All right. Well, maybe we'll
Thanks
have to do a spring episode. We'll start in late March and go April through June or something in a couple months here.
I was trying to get through the year, but I didn't make it very far.
That's perfectly okay. We got to keep making these podcasts, so we'll just do the next season as another episode.
Good enough.
All
okay,
right.
Talk to you later.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
See ya.
You guys still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, you didn't hang up on us.
Nope.
Way to go.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Mark and Dad. This was pretty fun, huh?
Yeah, it's enjoyable.
Yeah,
always good time listening to Simo or Richard.
Right. Crazy. Those stories. And Mark, when he was talking about the hockey thing, it had me thinking some element of heredity in terms of just like that urge to get together to do things like play hockey or play football on the weekend. I feel like we spent a lot of the winter during our childhood was about getting together to play hockey here, there, or the other place. So interesting story to hear there.
Who knew?
Yeah, I had never heard any of that before. So anyway, well, thanks so much for doing it. Thanks for listening to the podcast. As always, you can find all of our content on our website, www.outdoorrules.com. Podcast is up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram @Outdoor Rules. We got a Facebook page there too. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
Love you too.
Love you too.
Hunting and fishing, the great outdoors, mixing history, laughter, love, and folklore. Creating memories with family and friends. These are the trophies that matter in the end. Outdoor Rules.